welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to Divorce in December. It's the most wonderful time of the year. This week, what we're going to be talking about is my journey from undergrad to owning my own firm, and you guys had a ton of questions on that, and I'm happy to answer. Let's start with 13-year-old me. I grew up in St. Catharines, Ontario. So did Kristen French. Leslie Mahaffey grew up not too far away. Those girls were both about 2, maybe 3 years older than I was. And particularly when Kristen French went missing, she went missing walking on her way home from Holy Cross Secondary School, which would have been the secondary school that I would have attended. I want to say I was in grade 7 at the time when she disappeared. I'm pretty sure I was in grade 7 at the time, so I was about 12 years old. I think she was 15, so about 3 years older than me. The place where she was abducted from was the parking lot of a church, which was about 3 blocks away from where my house was. So it was very topical for me, and it rocked the entire city. Like, everybody was riveted about this to the news, and then when her body was found, it was devastating for the community at large. There were eyewitness statements saying that the kidnapper had been seen driving a light-colored Camaro. My dad owned a Camaro. It was a dark brown, but they set up like a task force of sorts. Anybody who owned a Camaro had to go through this like checkpoint, and you had to get a little, I think it was an orange sticker that got put on the front window to say that you had been through this checkpoint. And they basically I think they were just visually inspecting the vehicles to see if anything suspicious was up with that, I guess. I'm not sure. But obviously my dad passed the inspection, and we had our little orange sticker. And it turned out it wasn't even a Camaro to begin with, but at any rate, when it came to light that it was Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka who had committed these atrocious crimes, I remember watching the news with my parents, and I was closer to about 13 at that point because it did take time. But watching the news and seeing the crime scene investigators in their white like bunny suits, basically, and just being fascinated by the whole thing. And I don't know if it ever was actually true or if it was just a rumor that was going around in the media, but there was, at least in my mind, I had this idea that they had found a speck of blood that tied Kristen French to that house. Now, don't quote me on that. Again, I was 13 and the media was all over the place with that story, so that may or may not be true. But I heard it at that time, and I was just mind blown over the idea that a speck of blood could be so powerful. And I wanted to be a forensic scientist of some sort. In high school, I kind of fine-tuned that. I wanted to be a forensic pathologist. And then I got to university and I took a forensic anthropology course in first year, and I was hooked. It was all skeletons all the time. I was a very interesting teenager. And I was just fascinated by it all, and the fact that you could identify people just based on their skeletons. And so that was the focus of my undergraduate education, really, was forensic anthropology. And then I also did a minor in biology and a minor in philosophy. And with my philosophy side of things, I focused more on ethical sort of courses. So it wasn't really studying Immanuel Kant or anything like that. It was bioethics or ethics in the law and things like that. I just found that really interesting, all that sort of gray area of things. So, fast forward to my 4th year of undergraduate, where I would normally be getting ready to graduate, and my dad was diagnosed with lymphoma. And he became very, very sick very, very quickly. And it was at a time where I just could not get my head around applying for graduate schools or any of it. I was just existing at that time. It was just a really surreal time in my life. So I spoke with a professor of mine who had become a mentor, and she suggested that if I could, just to take a 5th year and just really focus on the courses that I was interested in and not make any rash decisions. She, in her way of looking at it, she would recommend that I stay in school rather than graduate, exit school, and have no plan forward. I guess she figured, and she was probably right. Like, I really think that that would have been my life trajectory, would be if I had graduated and had no plan in place, I would have just entered the workforce at whatever level I could get in at and just stay there. I don't know that I would have come back to school. Maybe, but I doubt it. So I was lucky enough that as a status Indian that I did have funding in order to go to school for a 5th year. So that is what I did. And my dad died before my 5th year started. He only lasted about 6 months after he was diagnosed. So my world was rocked. And like I said, at that time, there weren't a lot of forensic programs out there. And the ones where there were really big forensic programs were in England or in the States. University of Tennessee was what I had my heart set on because they had the body farm and all of that. And it all sounds just so atrocious, but I was just fascinated by it all. And I was so passionate about it. And I really wanted to go that route. But I couldn't leave my mother. And I've mentioned this before as well, my grandparents, my maternal grandparents adopted me. So my mother is biologically my grandmother, my mother's mother. And so elevated age. And I wanted something where I could go to school, get my degree, go to work. Like that there was this very mapped out path to success. So that's where the idea of going to law school came into mind. And I thought, well, maybe I won't be the forensic scientist, but I could be the criminal prosecutor and still work in that capacity. So I got a book on studying for the LSAT, and I studied for the LSAT, and I took the LSAT, and I did okay on the LSAT, and I got into law school. And I hated it. I hated law school. I did not have a good time there. I think I suffered from anxiety and depression well before I was ever diagnosed. I was diagnosed after my daughter was born, so this was well after I had graduated from law school, but I think I could have definitely benefited from medication at that point, because even though I was surrounded by like hundreds of like-minded individuals, I still felt lonely a lot of the time. And law school is stressful. Like you take one exam per course and it's worth 100% of your mark. If you're not having a good day, you're pooched. That's all there is to it. And because it was so theoretical and there was no like concrete answers. I came from an undergraduate degree where that bone was your scapula or it wasn't, and it was from the left side or it wasn't. Like it was very clear and very detail oriented. And then I jumped into law school and it's like, if a tree falls in a forest. So I'm glad that I had taken like that minor in philosophy because it did assist with that. But it took me a while to figure out how to learn because it just was a totally different world for me. So I did take criminal law in first year. It's a mandatory course. First year, you really don't have any choice, I don't think. I can't remember. I don't think there was any choice in terms of the courses that we took. There's just core curriculum and you had to take those classes. And I did take criminal law. And then the second year I took criminal procedure, which was a bit more detail oriented in terms of how the process actually works. And I quickly fell out of love with it. I don't know really what it was, but I fell out of love with the criminal prosecution side of things. And I really wasn't swayed towards the defense side of things, but I just was kind of like an amoeba in the breeze. Like that's a weird analogy. I was just kind of like floating around, not really knowing what my path was, thinking like maybe I'll become a corporate lawyer on Bay Street in Toronto, and then realizing what that was all about. And I was like, or not, because I'm not prepared to work 18 hours a day. And the idea of doing nothing but acquisitions, and I can't even say the word, doing acquisitions and mergers just didn't excite me. And then I spent a semester at a local community clinic, and I worked in the landlord-tenant division, and so I was representing people at the landlord-tenant board, as it was called then. I think it's called something different now, but only tenants. So I didn't represent any landlords. It was only tenants, and doing hearings for them and assisting them in keeping their homes or basically forcing their landlords to address the deficiencies in their rented units just like set my heart on fire. Like I wanted to work with people and I wanted to have a direct impact on people. So I took family law, and that is where my interest was really piqued. And that was sort of my main focus after that. Like that was just in my head. I was like, I don't mind trying other things, but I think family law is where I want to be. So then I graduated. And then after that, you have to article, or at least at the time you had to article for the better part of a year. I can't remember the specifics. It was a long time ago. So articling is basically like being an intern. And I accepted a position at a full service law firm in Orillia. Now, Orillia is a small town, and it is, say, about an hour and a half drive north from Toronto. So it involved moving up to this area. It involved all sorts of stuff. But I was very happy there for the most part. And I did dabble. So I did try different areas of law, and it was the family law that I just found just completely fascinating. And every case is different and every person is different, and you get to like see all these different personalities, and you get to have a direct impact on people's lives. And I really liked that element of it. And I continued on at that firm after my articles were complete and I had written the bar exam and passed and was called to the bar and all that kind of thing. Somebody had asked if you have to be called in each individual province, and yes, you do. Although I believe with my level of experience now, if I move to, say, British Columbia, there may be a way to like grandfather into theirs. I've never looked into it, but I think there are certain ways to do that. But I stayed on there as an associate lawyer. And then I found a position in Barrie, which is about half an hour south of Orillia. And that position was at a firm that did nothing but family law. So I applied. I didn't think that I'd have the experience in order to be offered a position, but I was, and I accepted. So with a very heavy heart, because I really, really liked the people that I worked with at the first firm, I did resign. Some of them took it better than others, and that was a very difficult time, like a very, very difficult time. There were lots of tears. But I, in 2009, moved to the other firm, and I was thrown in head first, and it was all family law all day long. And full immersion is the best way to learn something. You get a ton of experience. And I stayed at that firm for about 5 years and gained a massive amount of experience, learned what I really liked about the practice of law and the practice basically of running a firm, and learned what I didn't like. And same with the previous firm as well. Like I think in any experience in life, you learn what you like and you learn what you don't like, and you kind of model yourself after those two things. And then like changes in the firm policies and whatnot came into play, and I wanted a break, and I wanted to try something new, and it just wasn't jiving for me anymore. So I made an application, or I contacted. What happened? Good Lord, this is all a very long time ago. I saw a position was being offered at another firm, and there was a lawyer there that I had a lot of respect for, and I really wanted to join him because I thought that I would learn an awful lot from him. And it turns out that I was actually going to be hired to replace him because he was moving on to a different firm. Regardless, I took that position. So I moved firms yet again. And the beginning of, I believe it was 2014, I started at the new firm. I again was doing family law, but I had taken on some estate litigation work as well. And then I quickly realized that estate litigation is the only thing in the world probably that's like nastier than family law. And I just did not have the heart for that. So I scaled my practice down and just focused on family again fairly quickly after I joined there. And I stayed there until I opened my own firm in February of 2017. And so there was a lot of decisions that went into play there, and there's a lot of really hemming and hawing and thinking about what my next move would be. I don't want to say anything disparaging about any of the firms that I've worked at, but at some point, no matter where you're working, you can tell if it's just not the right fit anymore. And that was the very strong feeling that I had at that firm, that well, for all three of them when I eventually left. But a friend of mine, we would meet up for lunch, and she was still working at the firm that I was at in Barrie, this the second firm. She was still working there, and we both had very similar ideas of what we think a firm should be and how a firm should treat its employees and how lawyers should treat their clients. And we would meet up and discuss it and talk about, like, could you imagine if we owned our own firm, like how we would be able to like do this? And then all of that sort of like, could you imagine, sort of turned into like, what if we did it? Like, what if we actually did it? And it took us a long time to really like suss out the details, but it was a very exciting thought. And I wanted more freedom. I wanted to be able to go and pick up my daughter from daycare if she was sick and not feel horrifically guilty about it. And I just wanted more autonomy. And I had never, like early on in my career, I'd never thought that I would open my own firm. Like it was never a thing that was on my radar. It was never a goal of mine. I just thought that I would be basically an associate or perhaps a partner at some point in an established firm. And I never put my mind towards opening my own firm. But when my friend and I started talking about it, the more we talked about it, the more like obsessed I became with the idea. And just, it was like the biggest carrot at the end of the rope. And I was like, I have to go for this. Like, we have to do this. And so we would have all sorts of meetings and just chit chat about things and sort of flesh out the skeleton. And then we went and looked at offices, and we only looked at two. And the second one that we went to, we were like, this is our office. This is it. And we've outgrown it, which is crazy because we never thought that we would outgrow our office that quickly. But we put in our offer that day for renting. Like, we didn't buy it, we rented, which is good because we're going to need to move on to a bigger space at some point. And then we decided, like, we were talking about, when are we going to do this? And I was pregnant at the time, and there was two options. We just jump in and do it, and I'll take my like short maternity leave and away we go. Or I take a full year maternity leave, get my EI benefits, and then open up after. And there was pros and cons to both. I mean, being at home with my baby would have been incredible, but leaving early, the clients would have an opportunity to come with me. And then when we opened, I would have clients with me, and my partner was bringing clients from her firm as well. Whereas if I, stuck out my maternity leave and then resigned, I wouldn't have any clients with me because it would have been like a year since they'd seen me, so they wouldn't have come with me. So there was a bit of strategic planning in there as well, and it was just, there was other stuff going on that kind of tipped me over the edge, stuff that I don't necessarily feel comfortable sharing because it's the internet and you never know who's going to see it. But just suffice it to say, there was just things that were pushing me in this direction. And so it felt right to just put in our notice and do this thing. So it was the Friday. It was in November. The Friday before November 24th. That's all I know. And I gave my notice, and I gave a lot of notice. Like, my last day was going to be like January 20th or something like that. So it was the Friday, and then the following Thursday, November 24th, 2017, I woke up in the middle of the night hemorrhaging, and I was not quite 18 weeks pregnant, and there was a lot of blood. And I thought that I was having a miscarriage, and we only had one car. Barry was working about an hour's drive away all night because he was on straight nights. So I was panicking. Like, I've never felt fear that intense. I honestly don't think I've ever felt fear like that in my entire life. And I had to call 911 because I had no other way to get to the hospital. I had to wake Aspen up. She was only 4 at the time, and just say to her, like, let's get some track pants on, honey. We're going to go to the hospital. We're going to ride in an ambulance. So I'm trying to keep a happy face because if I'd woken her up like sobbing, she would have been just horrified. And I mean, here we go. So all things were fine. You've seen Bennett in my videos. He's healthy. He's happy. He's amazing. So everything worked out well. But on that Thursday, I was put on bed rest. Strict bed rest. I had just given my notice 6 days prior. So I was no longer working. Now, my employer at that time was fantastic. He did continue to pay me my full salary up until that notice period date that I'd given him. So that was incredible, and really did help to remove that element of pressure from me. And my partner would come to my house and I was lying on a air mattress in my living room, and we would conduct our business meetings that way. And any sort of running around and signing of things that needed to be done, she would bring the papers to me, I would sign them, she would go and deliver them wherever they needed to go. She was incredible. So February we opened, and a bunch of my clients did come with me, which was fantastic. And my partner took over a lot of the work for them. And although I was still technically on bed rest, I hadn't bled since November, and things were stable, things were going well. I was cleared to do very light duties and to take it very easy, but I was allowed to get out of bed, which was delightful. So we opened our doors when I was 7 months pregnant. I had Bennett in April, and then I took April, May, and June off. Half of April, all of May, all of June off. And then in July, I started coming in for a couple of hours, and I would bring Bennett with me. And then August, I was in for every morning, and I'd bring Bennett as well. And then by September, I was back full time, and Barry took paternity leave so he could be home with Bennett. So that was the other benefit, was that I could bring my son to work. He had a little sleeper that he would just sleep in my office or out at reception, and our clients loved it. It's just a very family-oriented firm. We're all friends. The dog comes to work with us. It's a nice feeling, and I think that translates to our clients as well. So that's what led me to open up my own firm. So I think I've covered all of the basics there. It's been amazing, and I responded to a tweet a little while ago where they said, what is something that 2010 you would be just flabbergasted by? And I'm the fact that I own my own firm and I have 2 kids, those are the 2 things that in 2010 were not on my radar at all. And I'm very grateful, and I love that our firm just has a different feel to it than some of the other firms. There's nothing wrong with, other firms that are much more formal and much more structured in that sense. There's nothing wrong with that. But ours is very homey. And it has a nice feel to it. When people come in, it's not stuffy, it's not pretentious. It's just, I like the feeling that our office gives. And I'm so happy to be a part of that. And we do good work, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. So wearing jeans to the office, what does it matter, right? I'm still doing a good job for my clients. I can still draft a letter and draft court documents in jeans just as well as I could in a business suit. Probably better because I'm more comfortable. And I'm really happy with the way that my career has gone to this point. So there it is. That is how I came to be a firm owner. And I think there was a question on how that impacts my day-to-day life. And honestly, it just gives me more freedom. It allows me to be more present at events for my kids without feeling guilty, and allows me to have this channel as well because I'm on this office sharing rotation. So it's Monday as I'm filming this, my associate and my business partner at the office, but I'm at home and I can dedicate this time to my channel. So that helps to free me up in the evenings to spend more time with my kids. So it all kind of goes full circle. Now, the downside to owning a business is that you are terrified because you have employees and they and their families depend on you being successful as well. So my partner and I are working with a marketing strategist, and we have she's going to be doing up a whole plan for us and all that kind of thing. So 2020 is going to be an exciting year, I think. And I'm really curious to see where this all takes us. So that is it. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will see you in my next video. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.